The surest way to make a man desire something is to forbid him from having it. The Stoics warned us centuries ago, the human mind does not simply obey, it rebels. Tell a child not to touch the flame, and his hand will tremble closer to it. Tell a lover not to leave, and the thought of leaving consumes them. This paradox is not just a trick, it is one of the most dangerous levers of power hidden in human psychology. Tonight, we will descend into the shadow of the mind, where control comes not from force, but from planting the illusion of freedom. They say the human mind is like a locked door. The more you push against it, the stronger it resists. But what we rarely admit is that resistance is not simply a reaction, it is a hunger. The soul seems to take pleasure in disobedience, as though saying no to authority is the most intoxicating affirmation of life itself. This rebellion is not learned, it is born with us, carved into the marrow of our being. Watch a toddler, barely able to speak, shaking their head violently at the word "don't." See a teenager stare back at their parent with fire in their eyes, precisely when told "you cannot." Resistance is woven into us as deeply as desire. Freud once hinted that repression is never clean. When a demand is forced upon the psyche, something in us, what he called the ID, quietly sharpens its claws. You can chain it, silence it, bury it beneath reason and obedience, but the moment authority presses down, the ID awakens like a predator starved too long. It wants precisely what it is told it cannot have. And when this forbidden hunger grows in silence, it begins to distort into obsession. Jung took this even further with his notion of the shadow. Every time society, religion, or a parent tells us this part of you is unacceptable, we drive it underground. But buried does not mean gone. The shadow lives in that subterranean cave of the psyche, feeding on our disowned desires. It waits, and the more we try to silence it, the louder its whispers become. The very act of control gives the shadow power. When you tell someone no, you have already conjured the ghost of rebellion inside them. Modern psychology has given this rebellion a name, reactance theory. The idea is simple: limit someone's freedom, and they experience a surge of motivation to reclaim it. The more you push, the more they push back. You see it in diets: tell yourself you cannot eat sugar, and suddenly your entire day revolves around visions of chocolate and cakes. You see it in forbidden love stories, the kind that inspire poetry, wars, and tragedies. Romeo would not have died for Juliet if their families had blessed the union. It was precisely the forbidden nature of their bond that ignited it into legend. Even in the digital world, this rebellion thrives. Ban a book, and watch it climb to the top of bestseller lists. Censor an idea on social media, and it spreads faster in the shadows than it ever would in the light. Prohibition in America was meant to kill alcohol. Instead, it gave birth to the mafia, to speakeasies, to a culture of intoxication far more seductive than what came before. Every attempt at suppression becomes the midwife of defiance. The image of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods captures this perfectly. Fire itself was not remarkable, it already burned on every mountain peak, in every lightning strike. But once Zeus declared it forbidden, fire became sacred, worth risking eternal torment for. Humanity's rebellion was not about warmth or survival, it was about proving that no command, not even from Olympus, could chain the will of man. This is the essence of reverse psychology, the knowledge that denial itself breeds desire, that a boundary is not a wall but an invitation to trespass. The rebellious mind is not a glitch in human nature, it is the very proof of our will to exist. And yet, in this fire of disobedience lies the seed of manipulation, for anyone who understands this hunger can guide it. The moment you forbid, you do not kill desire, you give it direction. You make it burn brighter. Nietzsche once wrote that man does not truly crave freedom, he craves the illusion of it. To be free in the raw, absolute sense is terrifying, like staring into the abyss of endless choices where nothing is fixed, where no path is certain. Most people cannot endure that void. Instead, they long for the feeling of freedom, a sense that they are choosing their own path, even if that path was carefully laid out by unseen hands. This is where reverse psychology slips in like smoke, offering rebellion while quietly pulling the strings. Think of a parent telling their child, "Fine, stay up as late as you want." The words sound like liberation, but beneath them is a hidden current. The parent has planted the seed of fatigue, of failure, of consequence. The child obeys, not because they were commanded, but because they believe they chose. It feels like victory, yet it is submission disguised as willpower. This is the paradox Nietzsche hinted at. The will to power often expresses itself not in raw domination, but in the art of guiding another into choosing what you wanted them to choose all along. It happens in love, too. Imagine the lover who whispers, "I don't care if you leave." The statement is not neutral, it is a trap. By claiming indifference, the speaker withdraws control, and suddenly the other feels their autonomy threatened. If they don't care, the mind panics, then I must stay, I must prove my worth. Reverse psychology transforms absence into magnetism. By relinquishing control, one secretly takes the strongest control of all. The mind clings to choice the way a drowning man clings to driftwood. Even when the choices are meaningless, even when they are manipulated, the illusion calms us. Supermarkets overflow with hundreds of brands of water and bread, and we call it freedom. But in reality, the outcome is already guided. We choose within the cage set before us. Reverse psychology works in the same way. It doesn't remove choice, it builds a cage of choices, then tricks us into believing that the bars are invisible. Psychologists have long observed this mechanism. When a person believes they are rebelling, they stop noticing who framed the rebellion in the first place. A government bans a film, and underground theaters bloom like mushrooms. Citizens feel like rebels, watching in secret. But who benefits? The film's popularity explodes. The state's authority strengthens by reminding the people that it still decides what is forbidden. Both outcomes serve power. The rebellion was anticipated, accounted for, and even desired. The illusion of choice is perhaps the most sinister form of manipulation, because it bypasses resistance entirely. Tell someone directly what to do, and they resist. But offer them a choice between two paths, both of which lead exactly where you want them, and they will walk proudly into their own captivity. It is a magician's trick, a sleight of hand performed not with cards but with the human will. Nietzsche saw this in the way morality itself was constructed. The slave morality of good and evil did not free mankind, it trapped him inside a system of choices dictated by resentment, by hidden power structures. People thought they were choosing righteousness, but they were obeying a framework designed to weaken them. Reverse psychology plays the same game on a smaller scale. It offers you the battlefield of choice, but the terrain is already rigged. What makes it dangerous is how intoxicating it feels. To believe you are rebelling, to feel the fire of self-direction, that sensation is addictive. We defend it with passion, we cling to it with pride. And yet, if we could peel back the layers, we would often find that our greatest acts of defiance were already predicted, perhaps even orchestrated, by someone who understood this mechanism. The freedom we defended was nothing more than a stage set for us to play upon. In this way, the illusion of choice is not a weakness of human psychology, it is its secret lever. Those who understand it can guide nations, seduce lovers, and command crowds, all while appearing to release control. For what looks like surrender may in fact be the most artful domination. There is a strange power in the forbidden, a gravity that pulls the human soul toward what it is told to avoid. The story of Eden captures this truth with haunting simplicity. The garden was overflowing with fruits, all ripe, all free for the taking. Yet none of them mattered, not until one fruit was declared untouchable. The command, "Do not eat," transformed a simple piece of fruit into a symbol of infinite meaning. Desire was not born from sweetness or nourishment, it was born from prohibition. The forbidden fruit glowed in the unconscious with an aura of rebellion, seduction, and danger. Humanity's first act of defiance was not against hunger, but against the chains placed on the will. Freud understood this when he spoke of repression. What we deny ourselves does not vanish, it mutates. Push it down into the unconscious, and it becomes an obsession that rattles its cage in dreams, fantasies, and compulsions. Tell a man he must never lust, and lust will stalk him in the shadows of his thoughts. Tell a woman she must never show anger, and anger will smolder inside her until it bursts forth in ways she cannot control. The forbidden does not die, it multiplies. The psyche, when confronted with "you must not," begins to crave, to imagine, to fantasize with even greater intensity. Jung expanded this with his idea of the anima and animus, the hidden archetypes of desire and projection. How often do our deepest fascinations emerge from precisely those figures or images that culture, family, or morality warned us against? The stern father forbids his daughter from seeing a dangerous young man, and suddenly he becomes the figure she cannot stop dreaming about. The preacher warns his flock against temptation, and temptation takes shape in their very fantasies. It is as if the unconscious delights in defiance, creating symbols of seduction out of every shadow cast by prohibition. The world is full of these forbidden fruits. When governments ban books, those very books spread like wildfire underground. When ideas are censored, they attract more attention than they ever would have in daylight. The human mind does not want what is easily given, it lusts for what is denied. Reverse psychology thrives on this paradox. By saying, "do not," you ignite a hunger that "do" could never inspire. History offers countless examples. During Prohibition in America, alcohol became more than a drink, it became an act of rebellion. Men and women crowded into smoky speakeasies not merely to sip whiskey, but to taste the thrill of defiance. In the Soviet Union, banned Western music was secretly etched onto discarded X-ray films, passed around like sacred relics. The music itself was not just sound, it was danger, rebellion, and freedom pressed into forbidden grooves. Even in love and relationships, the same law applies. The off-limits partner, the relationship marked by disapproval, often burns with a passion that ordinary unions cannot match. Lovers who are told they must not find themselves consumed with desire precisely because of that barrier. The forbidden person becomes the Edenic fruit, their touch a form of transgression, their kiss a taste of rebellion against the universe itself. This phenomenon is not limited to individuals, entire cultures have been shaped by it. The more a society tries to purge itself of sin, the more that sin returns in darker, more twisted forms. The Puritans outlawed pleasure, only to find themselves haunted by paranoia, witch trials, and hysteria. What they tried to silence became monstrous in the shadows. The forbidden is never destroyed, it is transfigured. Scarcity deepens this effect. To be told something is rare, fleeting, or restricted immediately increases its value. A simple object becomes a treasure when others are denied access. Reverse psychology manipulates this scarcity instinct, turning the "no" into a siren's call. Tell someone they cannot enter a room, and that room becomes the most fascinating place in existence. Tell them they cannot know a secret, and their mind will torture itself to uncover it. Humanity is addicted to what it cannot touch. The forbidden fruit effect is thus more than just a psychological quirk, it is the axis on which desire spins. By creating prohibition, you create longing. By drawing a boundary, you carve out the very space where imagination and obsession take root. Reverse psychology feeds on this paradox, transforming denial into desire, repression into obsession, and absence into the most powerful presence of all. Power rarely shouts its presence. It whispers, disguises itself, and bends the will of others by making them believe they are moving freely. Reverse psychology, when placed in the hands of those who understand the dark mechanics of desire, becomes less of a parlor trick and more of a weapon. It is not simply a way to influence children or lovers, it is a tool of seduction, politics, and war. Those who master it hold the terrifying ability to guide entire lives, even nations, without ever seeming to touch them. Robert Greene warned in his 48 Laws of Power that to control someone directly is crude and fragile, but to make them think they are free while secretly steering them, that is true mastery. Reverse psychology is exactly this law in action, the art of yielding power outwardly in order to claim it inwardly. The seducer who shrugs and says, "Do as you wish," sets fire to the imagination of the one who cannot bear to lose them. The general who feigns retreat lures the enemy into the jaws of destruction. The ruler who bans a book knows the people will rush to read it, inflating its impact and entrenching their own authority as the gatekeeper of forbidden knowledge. Consider seduction. Nothing dries passion faster than obvious desperation. Yet when one pulls away, when one says, "I don't need you," the flame of desire roars back to life. Reverse psychology is the alchemy of absence, turning withdrawal into a magnet. The lover who pretends to release their grip often tightens it invisibly, because the other clings all the harder. The appearance of indifference creates a vacuum, and nature, and the human heart, cannot tolerate a vacuum. It rushes to fill it. Politics has always been a theater of this manipulation. Leaders, both ancient and modern, have long understood that the surest way to draw attention to an idea is to forbid it. Every act of censorship breathes life into the very thing it seeks to destroy. The heretic becomes a prophet, the silenced voice becomes a martyr. And yet, this dynamic often strengthens authority, for it reminds the people who ultimately decides what is allowed and what is not. In this way, rebellion itself can be co-opted, becoming fuel for the very structures it seeks to topple. Reverse psychology is not just used against individuals, it is woven into the machinery of power itself. Warfare offers its own grim examples. The Chinese strategist Sun Tzu wrote of feigned weakness as a trap: appear vulnerable, and the enemy rushes in, only to be ensnared. Entire battles have been won not through direct strength but by manipulating the opponent's desire to strike where they think they have freedom. The retreat that is not a retreat, the weakness that is not weakness, these are acts of reverse psychology written in blood across the history of war. To give the enemy what they want, or appear to, is to make them stumble into their own destruction. Even propaganda thrives on this paradox. During the Cold War, each side portrayed the other's way of life as poisonous, forbidden, corrupting. Yet this very banishment made the allure irresistible. Western music smuggled into the Soviet bloc became a secret revolution, not because of its melodies alone but because it carried the thrill of defiance. The forbidden became the symbol of freedom. And in the West, the whispered mystery of life, behind the Iron Curtain, made the enemy larger, more fascinating, more monstrous. Both sides weaponized what they denied, using prohibition as a mirror to stoke obsession. This is the hidden cruelty of reverse psychology as a power game. It never merely directs behavior, it infects desire. It reshapes what people long for, making them run willingly into cages built for them. The soldier charges into the trap believing he sees victory. The lover clings tighter believing they are choosing passion. The citizen rebels against censorship only to confirm the very power of the censor. Reverse psychology creates not just compliance, but complicity. It makes the manipulated believe they are the authors of their own downfall. The darkest truth is that power, at its highest level, does not command, it tempts. It offers rebellion, illusion, and the forbidden, then sits back while its victims enslave themselves. Reverse psychology is the magician's greatest trick in politics, love, and war. It does not force obedience, it manufactures desire. And when desire itself has been captured, resistance becomes impossible. Jung once warned that what we resist not only persists, but grows stronger, shaping the architecture of our inner life in ways we can barely perceive. Nowhere is this more visible than in the paradox of reverse psychology. For every attempt to escape manipulation, we often find ourselves sinking deeper into it. To declare, "I will not be controlled," is already to be entangled, because your very defiance is shaped by the command you are resisting. Freedom itself becomes another prison when the walls are invisible. The Stoics believed that true freedom lay not in rebellion, but in mastery of the self. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Yet how many of us mistake the opposite for liberation, confusing defiance with autonomy? When someone tells us, "Don't go there," and we defiantly go, we feel victorious. But the question lingers, did we act freely, or did we merely follow the invisible string tied to that forbidden place? To rebel is often still to obey, only in reverse. Reverse psychology thrives in this paradox, where every step toward freedom feels like liberation but is in truth another turn of the spiral. Consider the child who insists on staying awake past midnight to prove he cannot be controlled. He lies in bed exhausted, but grinning with pride. Has he won? Or has he simply carried out the exact script planted in him by his parents' false permission? The freedom he feels is intoxicating, but it is not freedom, it is compliance dressed as rebellion. The same pattern echoes through adulthood. The employee who defiantly quits in protest of authority often steps straight into another structure of control. The lover who swears to choose freely often finds themselves orbiting the very person they claim they have escaped. The modern world amplifies this illusion. Algorithms whisper, "You are free to choose anything." Endless movies, products, ideologies stretch before us. But every option is curated, predicted, and monetized. We scroll through choices endlessly, mistaking the abundance of paths for freedom, never seeing that the labyrinth has been built precisely to keep us wandering. Reverse psychology has evolved from a personal trick into a societal system, feeding on our hunger for autonomy by offering it in controlled doses. The paradox deepens when we realize that our very resistance strengthens the structure around us. Jung saw this in the psyche. The shadow grows in proportion to how much we deny it. The more violently we fight against manipulation, the more defined the manipulator's role becomes in our lives. We cannot escape because our entire identity becomes forged in opposition. The rebel and the tyrant become bound together, mirror images locked in eternal struggle. What we think is defiance is often another form of entanglement. This is why reverse psychology is so insidious. It does not need to break your will, it only needs to predict it. If your reactions are predictable, you are already controlled. The lover who always chases when ignored, the citizen who always rebels when forbidden, the child who always touches the flame when told not to, these are not free souls. They are marionettes dancing to the rhythm of their own predictable defiance. The strings are invisible, but the movements are choreographed all the same. And yet, there is something almost tragic, almost beautiful, in this dance. To be human is to be torn between the longing for freedom and the seduction of rebellion. We believe we are cutting our strings, but often the knife is made of smoke, and the hand pulling us is one we cannot even see. True autonomy, the Stoics whispered, is found only when you cease to react, when your choices arise not from rebellion, nor from obedience, but from a deeper stillness. But how many of us ever reach that state? Most remain caught in the paradox, chasing freedom in ways that bind them tighter. The image is haunting, a puppet, furious, slashing at its strings, only to realize that the strings were inside its own body all along. The hand that controls is not out there in the world, it is woven into the very fabric of our psychology. We rebel, we obey, we choose, but in every case, our movements are already anticipated by forces both external and internal. Reverse psychology does not simply play tricks on us, it reveals the truth that much of what we call freedom is theater, a carefully staged play in which we are both actor and audience, prisoner and guard. Reverse psychology is not merely about tricking others, it is about revealing the rebellion at the core of human nature. The forbidden attracts us because it whispers of freedom. But the moment you chase what you are told not to, you may already be trapped in someone else's design. So ask yourself, when you resist, when you desire, when you choose, whose game are you really playing?